We will work further with Silverlight and SharePoint and the client object model in this demonstration, and we will delve further into some techniques such as using CAML queries to define the data that we want to retrieve and manipulate in Silverlight. So just as before, we have client context objects and a list variable set up, and we're also going to build a list item collection based on a CAML query. So we've done the plumbing for that already, and you've seen that in previous demos, such as loading the client context web and lists and retrieving a specific list. So now we're going to start working with the CAML query object. So first of all, we will instantiate our CAML query object and we'll call it looming tasks only. And in looming tasks only, we will effectively query only for those tasks within a certain time frame. What we can then do is build a string variable with the CAML query, the Collaborative Application Markup Language query, for defining our tasks. So we will start off by defining the elements for the view. And we'll have a view element and a subquery element. And then we will provide a where filter. And we will use the LEQ, or the less than or equal to operator. And we'll provide a field ref with the name of due. And that's the due date for each task that we're going to retrieve. So effectively, we're going to query that column with the LEQ operator. We will then provide the value to be used in the filter. And because it's a date-time column, we should specify the data type of this value. So we'll say that its type is date-time. And then we can provide the actual value. So we'll provide a hard-coded value for this first run-through. We'll provide that in the standard time format that CAML queries can accept. What we can now do is close off the LEQ and our where and our query elements. Let's close those off, and we can close off the view as well. In fact, before we close off the view, we should specify the field values to be returned in the query. So we can do that with view fields. And we will specify that we really want to view the task title and the task due date. So in our view field elements, we will specify two further field refs. So fairly straightforward type of CAML. And our first one will be for the title, and the second view field will be for due. So that's the same field we are querying against. Now there's no requirement for you to query against fields that you are retrieving with view fields or vice versa, but it makes sense in our case to do that. So that's the text of our CAML query. We need to end off the view element. There we have a properly formed CAML query. Currently it's stored in a string variable. So what we can do now is use that string variable and the CAML query together. So looming tasks only is our CAML query, and we can say that its view XML is equal to the string that we have just created. So effectively that's how this object works. You set a view XML property to a CAML query, and that's the job done for that. Now looming tasks is a list item collection, very similar to the server-side SP list item collection. And so it supports similar methods such as getItems. And the getItems method accepts a CAML query type object as a parameter. So effectively, when we access the looming tasks only list item collection, it will only contain those tasks that we have queried. We then do a load and an execute query async, and just as in previous demonstrations, we are in Silverlight, so we are shelling out into a background thread. And at some point we need to return to the main UI thread with dispatcher.begin invoke. But that's the same as we saw in the previous demo. So let's build and verify that our Silverlight application works as expected. Just notice that we have a build path to the client bin folder, and that's where our Silverlight web part that ships with SharePoint can be pointed to. In fact, in our solution, that's where it's pointed to. So now let's build our solution and we can go and test out whether we get the tasks that we are expecting and whether our CAML query has executed effectively and properly. And there we have our tasks before our chosen date.